Welcome one, and welcome all. Originally, last year, I'd planned out an episode deep diving into the dark depths of Reddit. Seeing as it's one of the last true forum sites out there, it's a trove of everyday questions people have, and in many cases, they end up getting the answers they seek. But sometimes, not even the very active people of Reddit can solve someone's issues. Sometimes the answers are not that simple. So, gather around the campfire, everyone, and come with me foraging into Reddit's darkest unsolved posts. This first one is actually a series of comments posted on January 19th, 2014 by the now deleted user Swift Justice, responding to the question, "What's the scariest situation you've been in and thought, I'm not getting out of this alive? Serious." This former missionary, as it turns out, ended up getting a little too close to someone horrible in what might be one of the creepiest close encounters out there. I've posted this before, but it's by far the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. This post is very long, but otherwise I couldn't tell the whole story as well. When I was a missionary in Brazil, my companion and I were approached by a seemingly homeless man who greeted us in almost perfect English. Turns out he was an American who'd been living in Brazil for about 30 years. His name was Bickford, and he had been in his late 50s or 60s, but it was hard to tell because of his big beard and unkempt appearance. He feigns interest in what we were peddling and asks for a copy of the Book of Mormon, but is clearly more excited to be speaking English with two Americans. We meet up with him a few times to discuss religion, but he would always meet us at the side of the road or some other public, still secluded place. We had to give weekly reports to the ecclesiastical leader of the local unit about who we were teaching. After meeting with Bickford a few times, we bring him up in our weekly meetings, but the leaders and his bishops already know who we're talking about and caution us to stay away from this guy. Apparently he's a bit unstable, and once or twice a year, will start bothering the missionaries. My companion and I can't believe that the bishop is referring to the exact same person, so we continue meeting with him. I don't know how to adequately describe the creepiness of this guy. Between his disheveled appearance, flat out lying to us, and other small signs, he had a certain sinister vibe, but with nothing concrete to put our finger on, we continued to speak to him. Occasionally, he would run into us, right outside the house we lived in. One night, after talking about his house in the jungle and how nice and wonderful it was out there, he agrees to have us meet him at the side of the road in front of his house, so he can guide us down the path to it. The time arrives, and we're waiting patiently on the side of the road, but Bickford is very late. Just as we are about to leave, he arrives and takes us down to the path, to the jungle. At this time, it's very dark, and we are walking through waist-high foliage. This area had roads and cities, but it was right next to a large reservoir, so if you left the main roads, you could become very isolated and overcome very quickly. We walked down this path for what seemed like forever. I kept walking the spiderwebs with my face and almost losing my shit. Luckily, I carried a small LED flashlight. It seemed woefully underpowered out there in the jungle though. When we finally arrived at his house, my companion and I played it cool, but we couldn't believe what we were seeing. In a small clearing, there was a wooden cabin that had half collapsed in on itself. He said, "Welcome home," and let us inside. There was no electricity, no running water, no utilities whatsoever. We walked through the front door frame, no door at all, and saw that the furniture in the house had been destroyed. Literally, someone had concentrated a large amount of effort and time to achieve this level of destruction. Chairs were unrecognizable, and there was trash everywhere. He begins showing us the main room, and that's when I noticed them. Notes, in chalk, on every square inch of the wooden walls, up the walls, on the ceiling, a tiny frenzied scrawl. I trained my lights on the notes and started to read them, and that's when it got real. Most of these notes were variations of, "Jesus will forgive me, but I have to stop. I did it again, and so on. These with a month and date all written next to them, and the piece de resistance, the names of several children, and their ages, and graphic sexual detail about them. We tried so hard not to mention the notes. We tried so hard to make small talk about the rotting food on the stove, or the 100 so rats he kept in the basement. Anything but the notes. From glances at my companion, I could see that he was at DEFCON 1 as well, and we decided to get the hell out of there. We made some excuse about being late, that we needed to get home, and he reluctantly offered to show us the way back on the condition that we could come visit again. As we get out of the house, he suddenly remembers that he knows a shortcut and tells us to follow him. The direction he's trying to lead us is clearly not the way back to the road, and instead only led deeper into the jungle. We politely declined, and luckily we were able to follow the trail that we'd originally made through the underbrush. This time, however, I did not care at all about the spiders. When we got back to the road, we realized we were safe, looked at each other as if to say, did that really happen? I was so terrified I physically could not speak. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before nor since. I absolutely could not make a sound. I was so scared. My companion called our leaders, who called their leaders, and we ended up moving about a week later, but not before making an entry into our area book, warning all other missionaries to stay away from this guy. I realized the entire ordeal about what Bickford did sounds completely cliche. That's why after our second conversation with him, I started recording everything with my digital camera. I would set it on audio record mode and stick it into my pocket. Here's the audio. Make sure to turn your speakers down before you click on it. The camera was in my pocket and was rubbing against my leg, making a very annoying sound. I forgot that we had met him in a bar, so skip to about 27 minutes in when we leave to his house. The audio is terrible quality, and at one point I even slip and fall into the entrance of his rat dungeon, but it is 100% entirely real. After I posted this on Reddit, I went and made a report to the local police in the area, along with the Brazilian Federal Police. If Rhoda has any say in the matter, Bickford's rats have probably already disposed of his body. And yes, the audio linked really is the full 1 hour and 17-minute recording of OP's encounter with Bickford. At about 44 minutes in, Bickford gets on the phone with his supposed secretary, and user Aniteb in the replies was kind enough to give us a translation. I'm about to play several parts of this audio, accompanied by the translation on screen when needed. If you do not wish to listen, please skip to the time displayed now.
Sometimes the school gives me a new schedule and I have to reprogram. Remember, this is the same one?
Oh, someone's calling you.
The same one you saw in the school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
Antônio, boa tarde, boa noite. Pois não? Oi. This is my secretary. She's in my house in Santo André. Hi. Oi. Eu estou com 2 amigos americanos aqui no sítio. Eu não vou voltar. Não, eu não vou voltar antes de 11 horas da noite. Estou com McDougall e Nelson. Eu falei para eles que você é minha secretária. Você quer falar com eles? Não conhece, mas você pode conhecer bons rapazes. Sim, fala, querida.
Get on back. At least a 20-minute walk, and we gotta be at our house in time.
inside. There's a couple living there.
Is it in the forest?
I rented for a couple.
Is it here on the street?
Yes. Even that kid, he has this house in the last over time.
Really?
Yeah.
And we don't really, like I said, we don't even know how much we pay. We don't have any control really over our housing.
Even if I charge the organization half of the price you pay there.
You have to talk to It's not our decision in any way. We don't deal with that. So, but really, we can talk about this another day. We'll give you a call this week.
Okay, Michael. Congratulations, you have your hair cut. You had it cut the right way.
Thanks.
You can hear in real time as OP goes from confident to terrified, awkwardly trying to end the conversation and get as far away from this man as possible. On the other hand, there is an eerie unhingedness to Bickford. You can hear it in his very voice. He seems to be talking in riddles at several times about manufacturing gas stoves and such. Many of the replies seem to agree with me, themselves theorizing about how even the rats could be a code for something else that I'm sure you can figure out. However, OP did remind everyone that there was in fact real mutilated rats in Bickford's shack, so he was to some extent genuinely torturing rodents. This world sometimes is just messed up, and you never know what kind of disgusting person you're standing face to face with, especially while being isolated and out in a foreign country. Young travelers are often easy targets of crimes here. I'm very, very glad that OP was able to get away from this man. Who knows what repulsive and potentially even fatal acts Bickford may have enacted upon them given the chance. OP would post a very similar retelling of the story on the ex-Mormon subreddit around Halloween of this same year, further giving cadence to the idea that this really did all happen. Neighbors. For a majority of people, neighbors are those you're friendly with, who you share a space with, who you can wave at and have a nice conversation with. For many, however, neighbors can be annoying. They're people to avoid at all costs. That definitely is not rare at all. But it is quite rare that a neighbor ends up being so strange that things quickly escalate from annoying to downright terrifying. A recluse with obsessively personal behavior. This was unfortunately the reality for Blue Black Jupiter, who in July of 2021 uploaded to RBI, "Upstairs neighbor stalks me," and she had this to say. Me, single black female from the US. Her, single white female from Ireland. I can't even begin to describe how unbelievable and frightening this situation is. It started shortly after I moved into my new apartment, September 1st, 2020. Therapist picked up on the fact that I seemed uneasy and asked if I felt safe. At the time, I hadn't tuned into my surrounding much, but realized that she was right, and I hadn't been relaxing. It was apparent why. Inexplicably, my neighbor above would follow me from room to room and hover over me. For example, if I'm in my bedroom, she will already be in the room above it. If I get up to go to the kitchen, she will tail behind seconds after. If I go back to my room, she will do the same, sometimes stomping. She's literally my shadow. For the first few months, she did this nearly every single time I got up to do something, even during more intimate moments like taking a shower or using the bathroom. Dumbfounded, I asked some friends if they'd ever been able to hear their downstairs neighbor. I've never heard my own in the past in places, and I can't hear those below me now. I took detailed notes for a week before realizing that these things weren't a coincidence. The first person I told was my therapist. She encouraged me to seek out an evaluation, and I did. Not having a history of such illnesses, I never doubted my observations, but still wanted to rule out the onset of something like schizophrenia. I'm fine in that regard. It sounds crazy, but for the longest time, I've suspected there might be hidden cameras in my apartment. There have been too many things I've done that she's reacted to that wouldn't be possible without seeing me. And honestly, hidden camera crimes will be more frequent once people realize how easy they are to get on places like Amazon. They're already an issue in places like South Korea. Why I think there's more to this. She never ever leaves her apartment, and until May, never appeared to have any visitors. Those visitors were some of the tenants on my floor. They moved out last weekish. When I complained to the landlord in October, kept it vague to not seem insane, he told me maintenance was never able to get into her unit. He also said that 2 people lived there and that one was unemployed. Said he would talk to her in person, which I didn't get as well because we were still in lockdown. Landlord then went MIA and hired property management. Her roommate secretly moved out last year. All the tenants on her floor moved out by June. All units in the building are on September leases with the exception of one. One of the tenants on her floor had a roommate who appeared to move out during the middle of the year. Someone left a bottle of bleach square on my doormat. This has racist connotations, and bleach acid attacks are not uncommon in Europe. I suspect she might have done it. I cannot hear the tenants below me, and I could barely hear those next to me before they moved out. The only sounds I really hear from any upstairs neighbors are her stomping, smoke alarm, and when she first turns on her shower. This isn't an installation problem, and I never got a signed copy of the lease. This caused me a significant amount of fear and exacerbated my medical issues. I've lost months of work and have spent nearly a quarter of my lease living with my friends. I live very much in fear this person could harm me as they are fixated on me 24/7 and never ever leave their apartment. This is an extremely strange situation. Given how folks in my periphery have behaved, I believe someone knows something. I can't keep quiet on this any longer and fear she might do this to someone else. I'm hoping that by sharing this story, the community might be able to help me with the following. Identify the places where the cameras can hide, detect different types of cameras, such as Wi-Fi enabled, SD card based, and so on. But any help would be appreciated. Thank you for your time. This channel is no stranger to stalker stories, but of all of them we've covered, this one truly seems like the most plausible to me, because it's been caught on camera. This video is 9.5 minutes long, and what it shows is that OP really isn't lying. It's faint at moments because of the audio quality and apparent at others, but when OP moves around from room to room, you can hear the ever so slight footsteps of the tenant above. In the comments, she answered a few questions people had. Does she still follow you from room to room if the lights are completely off and it's dark in your apartment? I find it odd that she follows you from room to room if she's watching you with cameras. Maybe she has a tablet with a live feed that she walks around with. Try seeing if she follows you when she shouldn't be able to see you. Night vision cameras exist, so it's not conclusive. I think it's unlikely that any cameras she could have put in have night vision because most night vision cameras have lights around the lens that turn on when it's too dark for the camera to capture an image. You definitely see those lights. And do you have a car? I had issues with the neighbor and I ended up getting a dash cam that would take video even when the car was parked. And I made sure my car was pointing towards the stairs we were both used to get in and out of our apartments. A trail cam would work too. It would help to know if she's following you when you leave your apartment. I think you should also try to find a way to have a camera pointed at your front door in case there's a new similar thing to the bleach incident. Yes, she still follows me even when it's dark in my apartment. I only ever really have one light on because of this. I even shower in the dark. I wonder why she follows me if she can remain stationary, but I suspect it's because she might be trying to prank me with this. Also, I assume there's a desk right above my bed. I hear her as she gets in and out of her rolling chair, so that she could potentially be a viewing location. That tip about the car is clever, but unfortunately I don't have one. But thank you for your helpful comment. Does she follow you when other people are in the apartment? They can make recordings too, which I think would be important proof that you're not crazy if you need to take legal action at any point. I hope it doesn't come to that, but you mentioned some court action in another reply, and it doesn't hurt to be prepared. For what it's worth, I don't think you're crazy, but I'm seriously worried about your upstairs neighbor. Please stay safe and get out of there as soon as you're able. Thank you for replying and validating my concerns. They've heard her follow me, but they weren't followed themselves. She'll hover above us though. One of them even observed her being quiet when I stepped out for 20 minutes, only to start up again once I returned. Blue Black Jupiter would reply to some other people, informing us that there were actually court actions taken against this upstairs neighbor, though it never got anywhere due to the lack of proof. She was then generous enough to provide the subreddit with a few updates, of which I will read. First update. Thank you so much to everyone who responded. Feeling supported and validated has been overwhelming these last few hours. It's been a long road dealing with this, and I'm not sure what happens from here. At the very least, it might expose a new way people are able to stalk others. On the surface, her actions seem comical, but her methods are worrisome. I also appreciate the skepticism for some posters, because even through all this, I have to maintain some as well, if only to preserve my sanity. I wasn't able to test for cameras last night as she stayed up as late as I did, so I ended up falling asleep. I'll try again tonight. My friend just arrived this morning, and I'll keep this thread updated. Second update. Thank you all once again for commenting. I'll try to get through as many comments as possible to provide more info. My friend has been working at my place since this morning. I've largely stayed in my bedroom while she has been in another room at her computer. We've noticed the following. When my friend was setting up her computer in the morning, my neighbor came above us briefly before walking away. When I left my apartment for a little over an hour, my friend said she came above her, stomped for a bit, then mostly stayed silent. She didn't follow my friend around, but my friend was also at her desk, so didn't really walk around. When I returned to the apartment, I took a shower. My friend and I heard my neighbor above, near my bathroom, as she stomped periodically throughout my shower. She's above my bedroom as I type this. Largely uneventful stuff, but we're keeping an eye on things. I've seen a few comments asking why I'm waiting until nighttime. Given some of the advice about detecting a light, I figure waiting until it's dark as possible would be ideal. It's also quieter, so I can listen for any sounds. Third update. My friend and I spent the last 2 hours removing light fixtures, small crevices, little holes in the walls, and so on. We didn't find anything conclusive, but we'll search again after dinner. We'll be in the apartment. We searched again and didn't find anything. Thank you all for your helpful comments regarding finding hidden cameras. I'll do one last check tomorrow, but still not sure what to make of this situation. Fifth update. Kind Redditor helped me get my cameras back online and check to make sure unknown devices are connected to Wi-Fi. To give more information on the searches we did this weekend, we removed light fixtures and checked for anything, inspected the many holes in the walls, checked the vents, outlets, fire alarms, turned off all lights and used our phones to check for infrared lights, and we didn't find anything, which I'll admit gives me a peace of mind. I know that it's an unbelievable scenario, so maintaining some skepticism is definitely key. I have a few next steps in mind I'll be pursuing. Once again, thank you all for your help, comments, and skepticism. Anything of note happens, I'll create a new thread to update RBI. Have a great week. After speaking out about this, OP would reply to a few comments elsewhere about this stalker situation with her upstairs neighbor, assuring everyone that this was real and in fact very aggressive for the first few months, for it seemed that her deranged neighbor above would mimic what was happening below nearly exactly, no matter what it was. Blue Black Jupiter would eventually stop posting altogether just one day after her initial post, last affirming that she gathered as much evidence as she possibly could to take this to the police. It's a sunny August Friday in 2019, and user I Flipped Up found something utterly spine-chilling. They'd share this to r/flipping. Found a really creepy photo hidden in a mirror frame. What is the creepiest thing you have found thrifting? It appears to be a Polaroid, likely from the 80s or 90s, featuring an undressed older man laying face down on a carpet. He appears to be unconscious, or maybe even dead. Beside him, rope and what I believe to be his clothes. Whoever took this photo very deliberately hid it by removing the glass of the mirror, inserting the photo into the frame, and putting the mirror back in. Now, if this picture wasn't already unnerving enough, the open-ended question in the title prompted user Salverde to respond with their own anecdote about a similar picture they found. Not thrifting, but I feel like it fits the theme of this photo, so I'll chime in. When I was about 21, I moved to Alabama for work, and my parents and some of my siblings came with me. Every day on my way to work, I drove past an abandoned house right off a small highway in between towns. It was clear that someone performed some maintenance, as about once a month, the yard was cut down. It never looked good, but someone would come in with a tractor mower and level the overgrowth. Never saw someone inside the house though. One day I was taking my brother, who was in high school at the time, to football practice in the rain. We were early and decided to check out the house. I figured that we wouldn't get very far at the time, but that turned out to be very wrong. We got out and there was an old decrepit root cellar at the right of the house, door slightly ajar and pitch black inside. To this day I'm not sure why, but walking up to the entrance, I got a dreadful feeling. I refused to take even more than 2 steps closer to that door. I even go so far as to threaten to beat my brother in order to keep him from venturing into the cellar. So we decided to poke around elsewhere. We head around back, and to our surprise, the back door is ajar, opening into the kitchen. We go inside. On the stove, there's a small pot with silverware and rotten food in it. There are a few dishes on the counter, all of them, again, speckled with dried up and rotten food. The walls are a bright Pepto-pink color. As we move to the dining room, there are more dishes, these with rotten, half-eaten food on them, like someone had left just partway through the meal. Looking around, we can see the rest of the first floor, all of it the same Pepto-pink color. Maybe that put us at ease? We continued exploring the abandoned house. There were 2 bedrooms side by side and a living room, still all the same pink. We go up to the stairs, and there's a photo album on the 3rd or 4th. It's a simple little photo book that you used to get with pictures. My brother and I flipped through the album. I honestly don't remember most of them, but there's one picture that stood out. In it, only what could be described as a corn-fed man in a sundress. Both of us being young people chuckled a bit at this picture and continued flipping through the rest of the photos. We looked up the stairs and it was completely black. I don't mean dark, I mean black. We went up and discovered why. Every wall, every door, baseboard, window frame, and even the glass had been painted over black. The only light in the second story came from what looked like either a BB or a small caliber round hole in one of the windows, in which a small beam of light flowed into the upper story. The upstairs appeared to be an attic converted into a single room. My brother went back downstairs at this time, and with a macabre fascination, I stood at the top of the stairs, trying to see into the black without actually moving. Straining my eyes as hard as I could, all I could see was a black framed futon with a black mattress. I'm not sure how long I struggled with my feeble attempt to see into the room, but next thing I remember, my brother is calling me from down the stairs. I go down and he's in one of the bedrooms. He wants to show me a weird closet, one which had no back to it and instead jutted out into two rooms. In the closet, there are several hangers, but only one piece of clothing amongst them. It was the sundress from the photo. I'd like to say that that dress is burned into my brain, but it's not. I vaguely think it was navy blue with light colored flowers. But what I remember most is the feeling. It was the same feeling that kept me from going into that root cellar, and it struck me like a ton of bricks. I immediately told my brother that we're leaving now, and neither of us ever looked or went back. To this day, I'm not sure what happened in that house or why it was abandoned, but I don't regret leaving one bit. Now, I have a few things to say about this story. It's pretty obvious that, assuming this is the full truth, the subject in these photos may have been held there against their will. First thing that caught my attention was the mention of the Pepto-Pink walls. This shade of pink associated with the brand Pepto-Bismol is pretty much identical to Baker Miller Pink in a way, a color that's been long suspected to calm people, lower their heart rates, and even weaken them physically. Baker Miller Pink has even been used in jail cells and in studies to calm aggressive prisoners. Additionally, the black room found in the second story seems to be another use of color psychology. If this sundressed man was really being held here prisoner in some way, then perhaps keeping him here in the complete darkness would have been an efficient way to keep him submissive or subservient. However, what doesn't make sense is the bullet hole. Who shot it there? And why? Why is there just rotting food sitting around on the tables? Who just up and left? And what was in that cellar? Did anyone even actually leave? Perhaps whoever used to live there never actually left. Maybe they were still down in that cellar, and that feeling OP got kept them from immediate danger. And this is where I'm gonna end it tonight. Reddit's darkest unsolved posts. The lack of answers in such scary scenarios may be unsatisfying, but I think we all must ask ourselves, are we really the ones who need answers? Or is it the original posters, the ones actually experiencing these things, that deserve the answers? Hopefully, you're all grown enough to know the answer. I'm saying answer a lot, aren't I? Thank you everyone for watching this video. I know this is a bit of a different format than usual. Do you like this kind of storytelling type content, or do you prefer other stuff? I just thought I'd try this out. Consider subscribing and checking out the Patreon, for these videos take a ton of effort. And remember, don't stay up too late.